So apparently yesterday, a bunch of angry people showed up and took down a Confederate statue. This is a statue of Silent Sam, and it was erected in 1913, I believe. I don't know exactly what it represented, and I gotta be honest, I'm not much of a big history buff in as it pertains to the Civil War. I know a decent amount because crazy arguments between the left and the right have forced me to learn a bit about some of the arguments between the left and the right. And obviously there's a lot of people who are pro-Confederacy who think the North was more racist. You know, it was the Republicans that actually abolished slavery and things to that effect. And they talk about like the Great Party Switch, and other people argue that it never happened, the parties never switched, the Democrats are always the racists. And you know what, man, that stuff's complicated for me. But what I can talk about is more of the sociological effects, from my opinion. Now, I am not an expert sociologist, but I grew up in the hacker culture of social engineering, and I have some understandings of, you know, how people behave and why they behave. And I want to talk about these statues being knocked down. But I also want to say, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because apparently this is my second channel. I kind of just go off on rants, and most people who watch it don't realize they're not on my main channel. This is Timcast News. It's a different channel. It's mostly just like my hard opinions. But subscribe here. And then I'm hoping that this channel can work out well and I can keep doing these videos too. But let's take a look at this story from CNN. UNC protesters knock down Silent Sam Confederate statue. Okay, so you know what really freaked me out is the video. When I first watched this video, it's actually really scary. There's something that people need to consider when it comes to starting a revolution and dramatically changing your government and your culture, and it requires destroying the old, right? So again, this is just my loose opinion, not an expert. I've read a little bit about like the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution in China, and one of their goals was to destroy things that were traditional Chinese. What people say as it pertains to like this idea of cultural Marxism and the far left is that these people on the far left want to erase the pillars of what made this patriarchy or this white supremacy or whatever system they call it. People seem to call it different things, but they all tend to, on the far left, they call it different things, like patriarchy, like cis heteronormative patriarchy, like white supremacy, etc. And when I see them tearing down statues, this is mob rule, right? This is not community voting on things. There was a poll I saw recently, actually it was a while ago when more of these incidents were happening. There was a poll that said most people don't want the statues torn down. Now, I gotta admit, I'm actually in favor of maybe removing the monuments to the Confederacy for a few reasons, but not removing the removing the statues, but maybe not the monuments. And let me explain. These people are just throwing ropes and yanking these statues down, and I'm concerned that those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it, as the saying goes. And when we look at these statues, we shouldn't look at them and just act like it's a monument to bad ideas. It's a symbol to remember of where we came from, and it doesn't always mean there are good things. When we look at these statues of Confederate soldiers, we remember the bad things associated with them as well. And it's kind of like setting a reminder. It's not inherently good or bad. The problem arises, in my opinion, when you have these people who believe that the statues are inherently good. And it may be the case that obviously a statue in honor or in memoriam or whatever they call it, yeah, sure, that it may be a positive thing. And that's why I kind of feel like, okay, why don't we have a vote? We act like a society where we vote, right? And I think a fair proposition would be like, let's take the statue down, but replace it with something that's nonpartisan and just serves as a reminder of our past, because we don't want to repeat it. But let me play this video, because as CNN says, a video and pictures from a student shows the statue coming down on Monday as students chant, "I believe that we will win." So let me just play this clip. So I have seen things like this happen before, like in Ukraine. I'm going to stop there before I say anything that can get me in trouble, but I saw the toppled statue of Lenin in Kiev. And what worries me is that a lot of the people who are jumping up and down and chanting and screaming have no idea what they're protesting. Sure, some people do, but come on, let's be real. Now, I know there's going to be a bunch of lefties who are participating or who agree with it, who are going to be like, we know that we're tearing down white supremacy. And I'm like, most people on the left and the right have no idea the history behind these monuments. And I'm concerned that with this kind of behavior of mob rule, one, we're seeing a breakdown of the rule of law. Look, we vote on things, and sometimes change is slow. When change is serious, when there's a serious problem like an actual oppressed minority, like, you know, Japanese internment camps, for instance, yeah, that needs to be stopped, and fast. But this is just a statue, okay? It's a symbol, and these people are upset with it. So without consulting anyone around them, they just decided to destroy it, and they went and tore the statue down. Now, I believe one person was arrested. So the police said, I believe this is the UNC, they said, tonight's actions were dangerous, and we are very fortunate that no one was injured. We are investigating the vandalism and assessing the full extent of the damage, UNC said in a statement to CNN. Now, I gotta say, I really don't think that the university actually cares, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of institutional figures who like that the statue came down. Because, come on, is it really that hard to get a group of people to not tear down a statue? I don't think so. I mean, a couple of police officers could have stopped it if they wanted to. I ultimately just think they don't really care that much. So here we have a photo, and it looks like apparently people were throwing stuff at it, but you can see the statue has been felled, as they say. And there were police around it, but where were these police before the statue came down? Look, I'm not a big fan of Confederate statues. As I mentioned earlier, I think we can replace them with something else. To say we don't want a monument to bad ideas, but we want to make sure everyone remembers the ideas, because some of the ideas are good. A lot of them are bad. Like, you know, look, people having the conviction to stand up for their liberty and freedom is always a good thing. Personally, I'm not a fan of what the Confederacy was doing, but it's a very, very complicated issue. And I think, for the most part, in my opinion, the importance of leaving these monuments up is to remind us that's it. Not the good, not the bad, just what is and what was. Because those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. So they say, one person was arrested, UNC spokeswoman Kate Luck told CNN. The charges are for concealing one's face during a public rally and resisting arrest. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper's office tweeted a statement saying Cooper had been in contact with local law enforcement and UNC officials about Monday's rally. The governor understands that many people are frustrated by the pace of change, and he shares their frustration. But violent destruction of public property has no place in our communities. So look, if the police, if they're really going to say that, then why don't they do anything about the people who actually tore it down? Because honestly, I don't think they really care. And this is what's becoming worrisome to me. I made a video on my main channel. It's about a Bernie Sanders voter getting bashed over the back of the head. You could kill the guy. Okay, so we're seeing mobs go out, tear down, destroy public property because they don't like the history associated with it. We're seeing people go out and attack Bernie voters and people even on the left because he had an American flag. All right, think about that. There was a woman in Boston who, just like an old woman holding an American flag, and some Antifa dude grabbed it from her and dragged her as she tried to hold on because she didn't want to give it up. These people don't like the American flag. The DSA, which is exploding it's growing rapidly, says no borders. You know, many of these people associated with the far left say no nations. I am not going to trust the people tearing these statues down when many of the far lefties don't want a country at all. Okay? As a liberal, I believe we still need to have a country. And there's a lot of problems that arise when you see this far left, no borders, no governments, no ICE. The people associated with actions like this don't really have a strong through line to their politics. Okay, it's an extreme group of people who are going to tear a statue down like this. It's similar people who are going to show up for Antifa rallies. It's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez banning the press from her events, and she's a democratic socialist. Okay, there's a reason we need countries. And I've talked to even ANCAPs about this. I was talking to a libertarian, and I said, if you don't have borders, what's to stop massive multinational corporations from exploiting whoever they want because they have so much power? Power attracts power. You know, if there was no way to control borders, right? The DSA advocates this, and many libertarians and anarcho-capitalists advocate this. They don't want borders at all. It's like, okay, well then people who will take advantage of you, people who, like, okay, we have a collective defense in this country in various ways, right? We have the armed forces, but we also have government regulation and internal law enforcement, domestic law enforcement, who protects us. That is us providing for the common defense. And without borders, there's no jurisdiction. So we can have jurisdiction. We can say, okay, our country extends to this far, and we don't care who comes in or out. Well, if you're not going to enforce people coming in or out, then people who will seek to exploit you will come in and bypass your common defense. So, look, when it comes to the statues being torn down, like I can go back to what I was saying in the beginning. It's not so much about what the statues represent, in my opinion, because personally I don't agree with a lot of what the Confederacy was about, obviously. It's about the idea that an unelected group of people will use physical force against community property. How is that? These people, okay, you can't be socialist if you're going to destroy public property. Socialism is the idea that workers control the means of production, and to an extent, we share in public resources. That means if you want to make changes, you have to vote. If you are a democratic socialist, I'm not saying these people necessarily were, but if you're a democratic socialist, you should be opposed to this because it violates the tenets of democracy, right? Of voting and deciding on what should be done. Now, many people might argue, oh, but it's racist. So democratic socialists oppose racism, so it must come down. It's a violation of their principles. But that says to me that you would put principles over democracy. Whatever stands to reason, whatever is going on here, you have people who feel they have a right to exert their will upon others without their consent. And that is authoritarian. And it seems like every day we head a little bit in that direction. Mob rule is dangerous. If we want to live comfortably, peacefully, grow, and protect others and improve, we need to have conversations so that we don't kill each other. But anyway, more videos to come. Stick around. I've got a couple more videos coming up in just a few minutes.